Released in 1986, James Cameron's Aliens is the sequel to the classic Ridley Scott directed sci-fi horror Alien. If you're watching this video, you must know the story. Ellen Ripley returns as the lone survivor of a deadly encounter with an unknown xenomorph. Having been cryogenically frozen and drifting through space for decades, it's not long before she's face to face with not one, but hundreds of the deadly creatures that wiped out her former crew of space hauliers, as she joins a squad of Marines to investigate a disturbance on the now inhabited planet where the alien was first discovered. It's not long before the cocky swagger and misplaced confidence of the Marines is shattered, and Ripley finds herself with a handful of civilians and Marines with their backs literally against the wall as they try to survive and hold out for rescue as the Xenos try to find a way to get through their defenses. Some of the characters perform admirably under pressure, some do not. But who exactly makes the most prudent choices to increase everyone's chances of surviving the nightmare intact and unimpregnated? I'll be looking at the movie, the special edition version, from the point after which the Marines have their first disastrous skirmish with the xenomorphs and are left stranded and low on resources as they await rescue. It's probably not too hard to guess who's going to be battling it out for the wooden spoon in the "you kinda just make things worse" division. We have slimy Weyland-Yutani representative Carter J. Burke and inexperienced but bullheaded Colonial Marines Lieutenant William Gorman. Just as a quick aside, by the way, Gorman's first name seems to change even among canon sources, being referred to either as Scott or William. It seems on the surface that it'd be easy to say that Burke must be the weakest link. It's revealed that he caused this whole debacle by sending an unprepped team to investigate the site that Ripley said was the origin of the xenomorph. He knowingly tries to murder Ripley and Newt when he manufactures a situation where they will be impregnated by facehuggers as they're trapped in the medbay. Then, before his ignominious end, he literally slams the door on the Marines as they move to retreat from their last stand against the incoming, ceiling-surfing Xenos who breach the Marines' makeshift stronghold. Certainly seems like an open-shut case, but it should be noted though that there are times when Carter J. Burke is actually sometimes really helpful, even if it's inadvertent or he has ulterior motives. The big tick in the box here is the fact that it's his call to bring Ripley on board. There's no doubt he wanted to use her expertise for his own gain, but he does everything he can to bring a knowledgeable, capable, and resourceful person to join the team. He likely demanded a wet behind the ears, easily malleable moron was put in charge of the military decisions too, which kind of balances this win out, but it is still fair to say that Ripley wouldn't have returned to LV-426 without Burke's badgering. As they make planetfall, Burke is just kinda there, offering corporate-friendly tidbits of information to the team. But as the mission actually gets underway, Burke backs up Ripley as she makes the extremely inconvenient but absolutely life-saving observation that any gunplay will result in everyone being mushroom-clouded. The Marines infiltrate the Xeno Hive, and once that disastrous mission goes south, again it's Burke who gets another tick in the box by keeping the panic-stricken Gorman from interfering with the rescue. As we move on, public opinion towards Burke radically changes. Ripley pegs him for exactly what he is, and surmises that he is out to sabotage the mission and the Marines so that he can make some moolah by bringing back some prized mementos for the company. Before some swift justice can be doled out, the company rep snakes everyone one more time, fleeing the group to find his own means of escape, locking the door on the Marines regardless of whether that leaves them stranded and doomed. Is this a dick move? Well, in principle, yes, but his last big move is actually a literal lifesaver. Burke quickly finds out a trap has been laid in the obvious means of escape. When he slams the door shut behind him, it forces the survivors to consider another means of egress, in this case, the air ducts that Newt knows like the back of her hand. It's a rough getaway for sure, but if Burke hadn't closed off the obvious route out, everyone would have been ambushed like he was, and everybody would have surely been wiped out for good. So, Burke's contributions and sabotages are actually a bit more complex than it might first seem, but what about that other low card in the hand, Lieutenant William Gorman, Scott Gorman? Lieutenant Gorman. He's an inexperienced and untested military officer, and he was likely selected to head this goat rodeo precisely so that it wouldn't go smooth and by the numbers. He's morale poison, and even in a place with dry heat and hardened resin, it's this incompetent officer who's creating the toxic work environment. He seems to be blithely indifferent to Ripley's expertise and any knowledge of the operational environment, leading to an unprepared team having to go onto a mission without relevant prep. His desire to just rush through the formalities and not even listen to the concerns of his sergeant means the almost complete elimination of the squad is really his fault. As everyone else pays the consequences for his decision, he freezes and panics, losing precious seconds that would have been spent mounting a rescue, and the fail streak only ends when he suffers a Lieutenant Worf special and is KO'd by some falling polystyrene cargo boxes. He's really rolled nothing but gutter balls up to this point, but at least Gorman has the grace to remain KO'd for a while as the grown-ups get some stuff done. He at least tries to offer a rather simpering apology and does seem to realise he's done really bad. He earns some plus points later on though for joining in with the last stand in medbay, and he does selflessly go back to rescue Vasquez as she tries to fend off the Xenos as they make their pursuit of the survivors. Yeah, sure, he Gormans it up again, but at least he and Vasquez go out like heroes, and it shuts off the Xenomorph's pursuit. The resultant blast makes more problems for Newt et al., but then again, what could anyone have done in that situation? Just another really quick aside, does Vasquez know Gorman from before? Her final words, "You always were an asshole, Gorman," just seems like something you'd say to somebody that you've known for more than just the part of one deployment. Moving on from the losers tier, we look at Vasquez and Hudson. They have a similar role in the story. They make few actual impactful decisions and are kind of there as reactors, filling the scenes with a bit more character and an abundance of witty dialogue. Vasquez does make one distinct decision. After sharing a spare firing pin with Drake, she rocks out and lets rip with her smart gun. Let's rock! Letting the Xenos have it as they start wiping out the Marines in the hive during the first attack. It's a bit of a no-score draw though, as the decision goes. On the one hand, it keeps the Xenomorphs at bay as they try to massacre the stricken Marines, but someone nicked the coolant exchanges and sent the reactor hurtling towards a complete Gorman-esque meltdown. Seems likely it was one of the guys ignoring orders and spewing out the explosive-tipped smart rounds that they were told not to do. Vasquez blue skies some ideas for a bit of on-the-spot xenogenocide. She walks the perimeter and does her best to stay frosty and alert before going out with a bang with Gorman. But she doesn't really call the shots and make a difference like some of the other characters. Just to clarify though, she is the ultimate badass and one of the best things in the best movie ever made. Corporal Hudson seems much less useful than Vasquez, contributing that kind of panicky, sarcastic negativity that just never really helps make a survival situation pop.
That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over.
For the most part, he's a nuisance and a distracting presence for the more proactive characters, getting on everyone's nerves and sapping morale. He goes out swinging in a legendary scene, but since Vasquez is all can do and Hudson's all can't do, he's got to be the least useful of the two reactive characters. Right? Well, it kind of becomes a tough call because of one legendary line.
Maybe we got him demoralized.
Kinda sounds like a throwaway bit of snarky sarcasm, but if anyone actually considered this possibility, they would see that Hudson is absolutely right. And that's a huge deal. See, the Xenomorphs just tried to assault the survivors' position. The sentry guns drove them away, and there's only really two reasons why that could be. One, a sense of self-preservation kicked in and the Xenos decided to book it, or two, some instruction came from a higher-up ordering retreat. Either way, a decision was made to cut the already extensive losses and hightail it out of there. In other words, they just didn't have enough bodies to continue this advance. If the survivors thought about it, they may have realized that this was a chance to turn the tables. Hadley's Hope has a population of 158 potential xenohosts. It's not likely that all were impregnated. In fact, they know that that isn't the case, as they've already met two survivors-ish, Newt and the kill me lady. They know not everyone may have been captured or even hatched yet. They toasted some potential hosts in the hive, and while their defense during that first ambush was sporadic and panicked, they clearly took out a few Xenos during their retreat. Meanwhile, despite having their home field advantage, element of surprise, and the Marines not being able to use their firepower, for the most part, the Xenos only managed to secure 2 potential hosts for impregnation. Sure, but they got most of the colonists, right? Well, actually, probably not. The state of the colony proves that they did put up a pretty good fight, and as explained earlier, the Xenos seem to be pretty bad at securing potential hosts when they put up even a desperate and uncoordinated resistance. There's probably nowhere near the full population of the colony that returned. The aliens endured at least 2 knockdown, drag-out fights against the humans, and they just tried to bum rush a tunnel described as a shooting gallery, which sent nearly 1,000 explosive-tipped rounds into their ranks as they bottlenecked into a confined space. Frankly, it would be reasonable to say that there's few Xenos left at this point, even fewer free to defend a counterattack since there was a queen with a retinue dedicated solely to defending her. Okay, yeah, fine. It's unfair to assume that survivors know this at this point, but props again to Hudson, because when he's given the information, he does figure it out. In fact, if Hudson's quip hadn't just been dismissed, our heroes may have realized they could maybe have made a move against their enemy and maybe taken the initiative back, because Hudson was right. They were demoralized. It's an Amazonian badass versus a whiny, sarcastic whinge box, but while Vasquez is a genuine legend, Hudson actually had the potential to make more of a difference. Of the 2 reactors, he would actually be more likely to stumble into being genuinely useful.
Check it out. I am the ultimate badass. Yeah.
Next up, I'm going to pick colony survivor Rebecca Jordan.
Nobody calls me Rebecca.
Okay. Against Bishop the android.
I prefer the term artificial person myself.
Okay, yeah, let's go with that. Between them, they contribute a lot, but let's look at Newt first. She's kind of like the anti-Hudson. He panics, she stays surprisingly cool. He's the portent of doom. She's proof anyone can survive. He's certain they're gonna die, she gives them a stronger reason to live. When the Marines encounter Newt, she's got some valuable but distressing intelligence for them, which no one values or heeds, except for Ripley. After the dropship crash, she keeps it together like a champ, and then does her best to help barricade and secure their position. Later on, she refuses to just be a victim when she and Ripley are set up to be living egg cookers by Burke. She has some good ideas and quick reflexes that stop her getting up close and personal with a facehugger. Later, when the Xenos attack en masse and Burke cuts off their intended route of escape, Newt correctly suggests that they can make use of the air vents. Her improvisational mindset and knowledge of the layout makes the plan a success, for some of the survivors anyway. Now, at a certain point she slips and is captured by the Xenomorphs. Does she deserve to be marked down for lacking the grip strength of a mountain rescuer and being overpowered by a creature tailored to defeat anything it encounters? No, I'm not going to mark her down for that. This isn't CinemaSins. Newt is subsequently rescued, everyone returns to the Sulaco, and while she can't really combat the alien queen, she does get points for having the wherewithal to evade those furious efforts to get her, until we get to, you know, that scene.
Get away from her, you bitch!
So, Rebecca...
It's Newt.
Yeah. She puts in a decent shift. What does the synthetic...
Official person.
Oh my god! What... Bishop. What does Lance Bishop bring to the situation? Oh, just another quick aside. I'm just putting these in as I think of them, by the way. Lance Henriksen had already auditioned for a passes for human artificial person before this. He booted the door in and intimidated the casting team when he went for the role of the T-800 in James Cameron's breakout film, The Terminator. He missed out on being the Cyberdyne T-800, but he did get this role as the Hyperdyne 341B. Bishop's role seems a little nebulous. Apparently a artificial person, is always present on USMC combat missions, and he seems to be a vehicle operator, science officer, researcher, and have some general non-combat support role. He drives the APC, researches the fate of the colony, but as Ripley points out, that doesn't really tell us anything new. After the dropship crash, however, Bishop pitches in at 2 key points. He notes that the entire colony will blow due to the damage to the coolant systems. It could be that Burke would have pegged this too, but it's Bishop who gets the nod for bringing this unwelcome but critical piece of information to everyone's attention. Without it, they wouldn't have had enough time to formulate a plan to get themselves off this doomed rock, and it's here that he really saves everyone's skin. And it's not the only time. With Hudson checking out, he's the only one really capable of remote piloting the dropship to save everyone's butts. And he has the added benefit of not being at risk of being turned into chum if the aliens encounter him. See, it doesn't come up in the film, but ordinary xenomorphs will simply ignore a synthetic. Piloting the dropship is instrumental in the survival of Hicks, Ripley, and Newt, so, that's a huge plus for Bishop, right? He is the lifesaver extraordinaire. Well, he is, if we ignore the rest of the films in the series. You see, Bishop picks up the Queen when he rescues Newt and Ripley, and this is the only point at which an egg or facehugger could have an opportunity to get aboard the Sulaco, making the events of Alien 3 occur. So, by saving Newt and Ripley, Bishop causes the events of Alien 3, which includes the killing of Newt, Hicks, himself, and ultimately Ripley, and almost an entire prison colony. And subsequent to that, because of the end of Alien 3, the chance is provided for some similarly nefarious corporation to continue breeding xenomorphs, experimenting on an innocent people, and creating a tormented line of garbage pail Ripleys. None of that would actually have happened if Bishop hadn't returned to LV-426 to be a super Uber for Rippers and Newt. Yeah, we better just look at what happens in Aliens and ignore the later films. Doing that, who is the handier out of these two? I'd have to say Bishop pips Newt. She is a wonderfully inspiring and resourceful survivor, but without Bishop's skill set, that just gets everyone a little extra time on a doomed planet. Bishop actually gets everyone home. But again, let's forget that he kind of wrecks the galaxy because of his well-intentioned people saving. So it's no surprise that in the best of the best division we have 2 super heavyweight contenders, civilian advisor Ellen Ripley and USMC Corporal Dwayne Hicks. Starting with the grunt. Right from the off, he shows a little more concern and consideration for Ripley and the experience that she brings to the table. He stops Drake from ganking Newt the first time that they encounter the plucky survivor. Remember that? And he subsequently leads the effort to catch her before Michael Biehn busts out his signature move of getting bitten on the hand by a protagonist in a James Cameron movie. It's really weird, it happens a lot. During the ambush, when Gorman freezes and Apone is out of action, Hicks seems to be trying to take charge of the chaos, and thank goodness for him having a little extra firepower when it all kicks off. As they regroup after that, Hicks maintains some semblance of calm and stops Vasquez from offing their hapless CO. Hicks steps up to rightly take the decision-making away from dickhead Burke, making choice to do what folks tend not to do in horror movies, bug out immediately. The plan goes south through no fault of his, and he immediately snaps into survival mode, making the use of the meager resources they have to formulate a pretty competent plan to get through all of this until it all blows over. Nothing but net so far, though he does lose points for not making use of the flamethrowers they salvaged. Seriously, he mentions they have 2 available, maybe one's busted but the other's fine, and they never show up or get used again. It's kind of weird, they could have given the working one to Gorman, maybe just used the fuel from the damaged one to make a fire trap. I don't know, it just seems odd that Hicks just kind of forgets about them. So, Hicks has the notion of using the sentry guns to lock down their hideout, and it works exactly as intended. Good call, Hicks. Good call. He also takes it upon himself to teach Ripley how to defend herself, turning a potential liability who would take up manpower being defended in a fight into an asset who can help fend off an attack. It's a very smart move, and it kind of looks like he's having a whale of a time with it too, so good for you, Dwayne. After Burke's little stunt in medbay, Hicks is ready to dish out some Judge Dredd style justice. Now, even though Ripley seems to start to protest, this is the smart call. Now he's been outed, this guy's now got every reason to work against the squad, and this is a combat situation. Everyone can't be keeping one eye on this active liability, so Hicks definitely has the right idea. Burke is saved by the bell. Everything goes to hell. But Hicks continues to make smart moves. In a rare situation where Ripley gets impulsive and emotional, it's Hicks who talks her out of going full Rambo in a surely doomed rescue attempt before they're ready. His last real act is to do a buckshot mouthwash special before a Xeno does to them what a blender does to a goldfish. Sure, it knocks him out of action, but he and Ripley would surely suffer more than some unwanted small talk and curious body odor from their unwanted elevator guest if they let him in. Besides the let's not use the flamethrowers we just mentioned decision, I still can't get past how weird that is. Hicks' practically minded, level-headed decision making is top tier stuff, but does Ripley measure up or surpass this sterling performance? We start off with Ripley adamantly refusing to join this potential Xeno rodeo. Sure, she's got to so that the film can happen, but this is a pretty smart take. She can't get ganked by her old enemy if she's nowhere near it. Still, she relents and goes along. She tries to impart some intel to the thick-headed goons she's riding with, but they, naturally, don't listen. It's not really her fault. Still, she makes herself useful, and this is more than just some boredom busting. Taking every opportunity to prove yourself an asset to the people who surround you with guns is a pretty good idea no matter what. Moving on, it's Ripley who pegs that bang bangs are a no-no, because it would risk detonating the nuclear reactor they were all standing on. This leads to Gorman making a disastrous call to defang his squad before sending them into a pretty much guaranteed ambush, but that's on him, not Ripley. She provided the info, he made the call. When the acid blood inevitably hits the fan and Gorman starts acting like a gobsmacked Twitch streamer and his team is wiped out, Ripley makes the reckless but effective call to use the APC to smash and grab the surviving Marines before they become camo-patterned snacklets. Without her quick thinking, surely no one would have got out alive. Not everyone keeps it together after the dropship crash, but Ripley, along with Hicks, goes straight to formulating and enacting a survival strategy. She then takes it upon herself to take some self-defense classes from Hicks, even pushing for the extra credit assignment. Plus points all round, but she does make a misstep in outing Burke. This kind of person's only ever thinking of number one and will do whatever it takes to remove anyone in his way. Ripley lets her emotions get the better of her by confronting the slimeball directly and privately, and seemingly hoping that her shouty guilt trip will lead to a change of heart or something. She does this, then makes another mistake by letting her guard down and thinking all of this Burke business is behind her. This puts herself and you in grave danger. It's a dire situation, but Ripley's quick thinking gets herself and the girl out of a certain death situation. Good job everyone in this universe smokes like a chimney, huh? After that, Ripley finally lets everyone know what's up with Burke, but then the third act alarm goes off and we're in another fight for survival situation. Ripley helps out in the fight, then wisely trusts Newt's improvised Die Hard-esque escape plan. It goes well until it doesn't. And while she has it in her head to launch a half-cocked rescue mission, Ripley has the presence of mind to listen to Hicks when he suggests that they make sure they're full-cocked before going back into the hive. Now, the others have a clear way out of there at this point. Do we mark Ripley down for potentially risking that all on the slim chance to save her diminutive new friend? Well, we could, but we won't. This is the sine qua non for Ripley. She and the others likely couldn't live with themselves if they didn't at least try. So while this isn't technically prudent or a particularly smart move, we're going to let it slide this time. It's pure heroics and very exciting cinema. As it stands, Ripley goes about things pretty smartly, making sure she doesn't lose her way back, literally taking everything that she can carry, and using the PDT to ensure she's not just aimlessly wandering about in the enemy's house. She goes deeper into the hive, and it's not long before it's Queen versus Queen as she meets the Xenomorph matriarch. Ripley's wise to not just wade in guns blazing. Plus points for noticing that this bug has some semblance of reasoning, and control over her minions, Ripley knows how to leverage that, and also when she can't. She goes full auto, and sometimes relinquishing control and causing maximum chaos and carnage is the right move, especially if you want to leave that in your wake as you make an escape. Ripley makes a beeline for the pickup, and it's touch and go, but everyone gets off LV-426 before it becomes a mushroom cloud. Unfortunately, they have an uninvited guest. It may have been prudent to check the situation before indulging in a backslapping session. Anyway, with Bishop out for the count, Ripley again shows her resourcefulness and eventually gets the literal drop on the Xenomorph matriarch, saving the day. Ish. Considering how Alien 3 starts off, a thorough search of the Sulaco before going into cryosleep may have been a wise move, but as with Bishop, let's limit the judgments to strictly what happens in this movie. So, Hicks and Ripley, they're a survival dream team that proves a nightmare for the xenomorphs of LV-426. But which one wears the crown? They're both broadly level-headed, thoughtful, and resourceful. Ripley drops the ball when it comes to handling the whole Burke situation, and she nearly rushes into a no-win situation when Newt is first captured after the escape through the vents. But Hicks doesn't even survive past the team's first encounter with the xenomorph without Ripley. Ellen Ripley gets the win here for her bold rescue of everyone after the ambush, and bravery, ingenuity, and resolve right from the off. From least useful to most, I'd rank it Gorman, then surprisingly Burke, Vasquez, Hudson, Newt, Bishop, Hicks, and finally Ripley at the tippy top. But what do you think? Who is the movie MVP? Let me know in the comments. See you around, and stay frosty.